The video begins, and we see the Demon King's castle in the continent of Archina, inside which the main protagonist of our story, RMC, is seated. He is the Demon King Belphegor Versios, who is called Scion for short, and he is comfortably seated on his throne. Just as he is sitting there, a guy comes to give him some information, but suddenly someone shouts that we are in danger. We see a small octopus-like creature that looks like it's from the land, shouting for some reason, saying that outside the castle, it's panicking a lot. Then RMC says, "October, do you want to die here?" We see a yellow-colored guy who says, "What kind of disrespectful things are you saying?" This guy is ranked 4th in the demon world, and his name is Luke Rabrita. Hearing his words, October says, "The thing is, the human warriors are entering the castle." Hearing this, RMC doesn't give much of a reaction. Then Luke angrily says, "How dare you come running here like this just because of some humans?" Then RMC asks, "What is Narda doing?" October says, "Oh, he got beaten by the humans, and not just him, Kane got beaten too, and not just Kane, Sane got beaten as well, and along with them, Narthak's entire army got wiped out." After doing all this, the humans are rapidly approaching the castle. Hearing this, RMC says, "Oh, is that so? It's been a long time since any human dared to enter my castle. Should I take a look at who these rats are?" RMC looks into his magical orb or whatever it is, and is shocked by what he sees. We see Luke, who is telling October to show him the way, saying, "Let's go. I'll finish them all today myself." But then RMC says, "Hey," and we see that RMC is panicking a lot. He says, "Quickly tell them I'm not here." Seeing this, both October and Luke are completely shocked and say, "Huh." They see RMC quietly opening a portal and escaping from there. Then Luke asks, "Your Majesty, where are you going?" But RMC doesn't listen to him and says, "Oh, and one more thing. If any of you dare to fight them, I'll personally kill you." Saying this, RMC leaves, and these two are left completely confused. But we see that before leaving, RMC leaves a piece of paper behind. When Luke picks it up, it says, "Hang the paper below this one on the door." Reading this, Luke is completely shocked. Then our scene cuts, and we see the human heroes arriving outside the castle. They see a note on the door that says, "The Demon King is not here, so come back next time. Human warriors." We see a word scratched out, but it looks like it says, "My princess." After reading this, the heroes are completely confused, thinking, "We came from so far to kill him, and he's not even here." We then see Luke and October pretending to be dead. Luke is thinking, "Is my Majesty's daughter here?" After that, our scene cuts, and we're shown a past scene where RMC says, "I'm very curious right now." We see a lot of demons attacking humans, and the humans are only trying to save their children, begging the demons, "Please spare my child. Kill me instead." An old man is crying, saying, "Please spare my son. Kill me instead." Seeing all this, RMC says to Luke, "Luke, I want your opinion on something." Luke says, "Yes, you can ask me anything." Then RMC asks, "Don't most living beings value their lives the most? Why do these humans act so strangely?" Hearing this, Luke starts thinking and says, "Oh, now that you mention it, I'm thinking about it too. You're right. Is it really necessary to know about these lowly beings?" But RMC says, "No, if we understand them better, it'll be easier for us to conquer the human world." Hearing this, Luke is completely impressed and starts blushing for some reason. I don't know why he's blushing, and please don't ask me in the comments, okay? We're told that after this conversation, the next day, RMC suddenly appears, and seeing him, Luke happily says, "Your Majesty, I did research on humans." Just as he's about to say more, he hears the sound of crying. When he looks at RMC, he sees that RMC has brought a child from somewhere. Seeing this, Luke says, "Your Majesty, what's that in your hands?" RMC happily says, "I found this in the Human Kingdom's castle." Just say you kidnapped it. What's with found? Then RMC shouts, "Why is this girl crying so much, Luke?" But Luke says, "How would I know the answer to that?" Then RMC orders Luke, "Do whatever it takes, but make this girl stop crying." Hearing this, Luke says, "Okay, sir." And just as he's about to set the child on fire with flames from his hand, RMC is completely shocked and says, "You idiot. He punches Luke, who crashes into the wall and says, "But your majesty, most humans only shut up when they're burned. Look at this guy, thinking burning the kid will quiet her. Humans don't shut up, they die." RMC scolds him, saying, "Go find out why she's crying." Luke goes to a bookshelf and starts looking for books. He finds one titled How to Become the Best Dad in the World. I don't understand what this book is doing in a demon castle. Both of these idiots start reading it, which has a lot of facts about why children cry. Luke says, "Your Majesty, there are so many reasons here." RMC says, "Let's check them all." They check the first reason, wet pants. RMC opens the girl's pants and says, "Oh, this is fine." But to avoid future problems, he uses teleportation magic on her backside, so that whatever comes out teleports somewhere else, and they don't have to clean it. Then they move to the next reason, which is hunger. Luke, being the weirdo he is, brings a dragon he just killed and says, "This is fresh meat from the black dragon I just killed." RMC, another weirdo, says, "Oh, this is great." But the smell of it makes the child cry even more. Seeing this, RMC says, "She doesn't want this either." Luke reads the book further and says, "Your Majesty, according to this book, babies drink from the breast." He takes the child from RMC's hands and says, "If that's the case," and sits down to feed her himself. Seeing this, RMC shouts, "You idiot, not yours. Go get something like that." Hearing this, Luke brings a bottle and says, "You were talking about this, right?" RMC, seeing it, says, "Exactly. I don't know where you got this, but good job. If you already had the bottle, why were you trying to feed her yourself?" RMC takes the bottle to the child and tries to feed her, but she spits it out and starts crying again. They say, "Next." Luke tries using a sleeping spell on the child, and it slowly starts to work, but suddenly the effect wears off, and the child becomes super energetic. Seeing this, Luke says to RMC, "She resisted my sleeping spell, and she's just a human, okay?" But RMC says, "Stop competing with her." They keep trying next, but the child just won't stop crying. Both of them are exhausted, looking like sucked out mangoes, lying on the floor. RMC is thinking, what does she want? Just then, he hears laughter. When he looks, the child is laughing. RMC is completely shocked. He looks at her closely and starts playing with her, lifting her in his arms, tossing her in the air, and playing a lot. The child enjoys it so much that she gets tired and falls asleep. Seeing this, RMC breathes a sigh of relief and says, "This is how I became a father." The scene shifts a few years later, and we see a church where many children are playing. The door opens, and a white-haired girl says, "Papa." We see RMC arrive in his human form, shouting, "My princess, did you miss me?" His daughter says, "Yes, but it's okay. You go to work anyway." Hearing this, RMC says, "My little girl is already thinking so much," and starts crying while hugging her lovingly. We learn that RMC threw a resignation letter in Luke's face and said, "I'm quitting the Demon King job. I'm telling you, I just found out today that being a Demon King is a job. If you also just found out, let me know in the comments." RMC tells the priestess, "I feel bad that every time I go on a business trip, I leave her here." But the priestess says, "You don't need to worry about that. A good girl like Celine is always welcome here." Hearing this, Celine says, "See, even the priestess is praising me." RMC says, "That's my girl. Shall we go eat something nice as your reward?" Celine says, "Yes, Celine wants pasta today." RMC extends his hand and says, "Let's go home then." But Celine shouts, "No, Papa, we can't go yet." RMC is a bit shocked and Celine says, "Do you know what we do before leaving?" The scene cuts, and we see them at the statue of the goddess inside the church. This goddess is Teresa, the goddess of kindness and generosity. RMC is praying in front of her, thinking, what is this? I can't believe I'm literally the Demon King, and I'm praying to a heavenly god. While he's thinking this, Celine and the priestess finish praying and say, "Hail Teresa." They look at RMC to say it too, and with great difficulty, he says, Hail Teresa." Hearing this, they're happy, and RMC pretends to be happy too. Look at what he has to do for his daughter, praying to a god who's his enemy. Suddenly, someone forcefully opens the door and says, "Priest, we're in danger." The priestess looks, and the guy says, "There's a demon outside." The priestess says, I'm sure I used divine power to create a barrier outside. Hearing this, RMC panics and thinks, oh no, that thing was annoying me, so I broke it. We see outside, where a pig-like monster is charging toward them. The priestess says, everyone, get underground quickly. The monster breaks the church wall and enters, thinking, weak humans, you want to escape from here? Everyone is running in fear. The monster says, okay, I should start now. Its gaze falls on RMC, and when it sees him, it recognizes him and panics, thinking, what is the king doing here? RMC notices that Celine is tightly gripping his hand. He looks at her and sees she's scared. He thinks, look how scared my Celine is. He puts his hand on her head and says, are you scared? Want to play a game with Papa? Celine says, a game? RMC says, yes, close your eyes and count numbers. Don't open your eyes until I tell you. If Celine does this perfectly without any mistakes, that scary monster will be asleep. I mean dead. When you open your eyes. Celine says, really? RMC says, yes, really. You trust your papa, right? Celine says, yes, and closes her eyes. I'm telling you, she looks so cute. She starts counting. RMC walks straight to the monster, who says, Your Majesty. But RMC says, shut up, and hits it with just his finger. The monster flies far away, straight out the gate, and dies instantly, its soul leaving its body. Seeing RMC kill it like this, everyone's jaws drop. Celine has counted to 4 when RMC goes to her, puts his hand on her head, and says, it's done. You can open your eyes now. She opens her eyes and sees the monster is gone. She says, wow, is it really asleep? RMC says, see, what did I tell you? Your papa is amazing, right? Celine says, yes, you're the best dad in the world. Hearing this, RMC's heart leaps with joy, and blood starts coming out of his mouth. He tells Celine, let's go home. Celine says, okay, but why is blood coming out of your mouth? As they start to leave, someone stops them and says, excuse me. When they turn around, they see the church people, who are happily saying, are you a hero? RMC thinks, I'm the damn demon king. He looks at Celine, who's super excited hearing hero, and says, a hero? Heroes protect the weak and defeat villains, right? RMC says, yes. Celine says, the priestess told us about heroes. They fight for destiny and are very strong. Hearing this, RMC is sweating because his daughter is supporting heroes while he's the demon king. He says, yeah, that's what it seems like. Celine, with hopeful eyes, asks, Papa, are you a hero? RMC starts sweating even more but thinks for a moment and says, yes, I'm a hero here. Hearing this, Celine gets even more excited and says, Dad, you're really a hero? A hero of justice. Wow, Hero Sinu. Everyone is shocked and says, what? He's a hero? Wow, Hero Sinu. Maybe we've heard that name before. They start saying, yes, I've heard that name too. He's that famous hero, right? RMC thinks, what nonsense. I just made that up. While he's thinking this, Celine says, Papa, when he looks at her, she says, I want to become a hero. Hearing this, RMC feels like lightning has struck him and says, what? The scene cuts, and we see the goddess RMC prayed to, talking to another goddess. She says, did you know the demon king prayed to me today? The other goddess says, what? What happened to him? The first goddess says, I don't know. Maybe he's gone mad. The scene cuts back, and we see Celine running, saying, Papa, Papa, and hugging RMC. She says, Celine loves you the most in this world. RMC says, I love you the most in this world too. As they're happily talking, Celine says, Dad, you know there are 2 things in this world I hate the most. RMC says, oh, what are those things you hate? Celine says, the first is people who lie, and the second. She suddenly attacks RMC, saying, is the demon king. But you're both, right, Papa? Blood starts coming out of RMC's stomach, and he says, Celine. Celine laughs menacingly and says, don't be so heartbroken. It's better that you're dying by my hands because I'm a hero. RMC screams loudly, and we realize it was just a dream. He wakes up shouting, "Oh, it was just a dream." Seeing him like this, Luke, who is cooking and wearing only an apron with no clothes, comes and says, "Your Majesty, are you okay? Are you worried about someone?" RMC first says, "You idiot, put some clothes on." Then he asks, "By the way, Luke, what do you think about heroes?" Luke says, "Heroes? They're brainless idiots who don't know their place." Hearing this, RMC punches him in the face, saying, "How dare you say that about my daughter's dream?" Luke falls from the punch, and his soul comes out, saying, "Your Majesty, how could you do this?" RMC says, "Sorry, my hand moved on its own." While they're arguing, Celine comes in. RMC pushes Luke aside and says, "My daughter," and picks her up. Luke also welcomes Celine, but she doesn't reply. Luke says, "Oh, I forgot I'm a ghost right now." Celine sees Luke's body and asks RMC, "Papa, why is Uncle Lulu lying like that?" RMC says, "Good question," and tells Luke, "Get up quickly." Luke gets up and says, "Welcome, my lady." But Celine ignores him and tells RMC, "Papa, you know I scolded some bad boys today." We see Luke, who's completely defeated by life, saying, "What? She ignored me again?" Celine continues, "Yes, and I'll try even harder to become a good hero." RMC says, "Yes, absolutely, but wait. What did you say?" Luke overhears this and thinks, "What? Lady Celine wants to become a hero? Oh, after making his daughter a hero, he's planning to make her a spy to gather intel from other heroes, just as I expected from my Majesty." Luke bows his head and says, "I understand well, my master. I'll personally train the lady to be a good hero." RMC says, "Get out of here." Look at Luke's condition. Worse than trash. Yet he's still licking RMC's boots. Whatever. That's his personal thing. The scene shifts to the demon castle, where Luke is kneeling, apologizing to RMC, saying, "I'm very ashamed, Your Majesty. I didn't know about this case." RMC says, "That's all in the past, let it go. For now, we need to figure out what to do next." Luke says, "What to do next?" RMC shouts, "Quickly find a way to get this hero obsession out of my daughter's head." Luke says, "Wouldn't it be better to let things continue as they are? It's just her dream, and a dream remains a dream. Very few humans are born to become heroes." But RMC says, "No, we can't do that. Celine is on a different level." He explains that Celine once uprooted an entire piece of land to help an old man, caught a monster instead of bugs when they went bug catching, and even a fortune teller said Celine would become a true hero. RMC says, "She's on another level, so we have to stop her from becoming a hero at all costs." Both of these idiots sit down to think, and Luke gets an idea, saying, "What if we wipe out all humans? Then the concept of heroes will end too." RMC says, "Do you want to disappear from here too? Look, there's a term called idiot, and Luke has redefined it. He's an unparalleled idiot." Luke starts crying and looking for books, saying, "Why does His Majesty hate me?" While searching, a book falls, and RMC picks it up and starts reading, saying, "Oh." The scene shifts to RMC's other house, where he's living a human life in secret from his daughter. They're lying on the bed, and RMC says, "My princess, do you want me to read you a book before you sleep?" Celine says, "Is it a storybook about heroes?" RMC says, "Yes, it's a story about heroes." He starts telling the story. "Once upon a time, there was a hero in a village, and suddenly she died. But the villagers lived happily without a hero." The end. Hearing this, Celine gets irritated and says, "What kind of story is this? I want to hear another one." RMC tells another story. "Once upon a time, there was a hero who heard rumors about a demon king. So she went to the demon king's castle and defeated him. After defeating him, the people made her king. But after becoming king, she started oppressing the people, and they became very sad. Suddenly, another demon appeared, defeated the hero, and became the new king, bringing peace back." Hearing this, Celine gets very irritated and says, "What kind of story is this? It makes no sense at all. I don't want to read this book. Tell me about yourself." RMC says, "What? Me?" Celine says, You were a strong hero, right? RMC says, yes, I was. Celine asks, did you ever meet the Demon King? RMC says, yes, I went to meet him. Celine gets super excited and says, did you ever fight him? RMC says, yes, of course I did. Celine asks, so, who is stronger, you or the Demon King? RMC says, him. Then he gets an idea and, to scare Celine, says, your dad is really strong, but the Demon King is much stronger than your dad. Hearing this, Celine says, oh, is that so? And gets sad. Seeing this, RMC says, look, the Demon King is very strong, so you should never go near him. But Celine says, okay, then Celine will become even stronger and take revenge for you, Papa. Hearing this, RMC is completely stunned, thinking, this didn't affect her at all. He says, there's no need for that. But Celine says, trust me, Dad. RMC says, okay, it looks like I can trust you. His plan to change her mind by telling hero stories completely fails. We see Celine start writing in her diary, where she writes, today, Papa told me stories about heroes, but they made no sense. Then I asked him about himself, and he said the Demon King is very strong. I think he's really scared of him, but I promised him I'll become even stronger and defeat the Demon King. When I tell him, he'll cry tears of joy, and seeing that, I'll be happy too. While writing, she thinks, I've decided I'll become a great warrior for my papa. She says, today's diary is done, closes it, and goes to sleep. After she sleeps, RMC comes and reads her diary. He's completely shocked. The scene cuts to the next night, where Celine is drawing something. When RMC sees it, Celine finishes and shouts, it's done. She comes to RMC and says, Papa, look. When RMC looks, he's stunned because it's a plan for how to become a hero. The first point is to do something good every day, the second is to study for 1 hour daily, and the third is to do stamina training every day. Celine, super excited, says, this is my plan to become a hero. She runs to her room, saying, I need to sleep early so I can wake up early. RMC is completely shocked. The scene cuts, and we see RMC at his castle, saying, Luke, how many times have you failed to stop her? We tried 43 attempts, and we failed every single one. Luke says, forgive me, King. I won't fail the next attempt. RMC glares at him angrily, and the aura from his anger pushes Luke back. RMC says, quickly arrange a meeting with all the top demons and make sure you summon everyone. The scene cuts, and it's morning. Celine wakes up full of energy, saying, today is the first day of my training. RMC watches her weird antics, thinking, all the preparations are done. He gives a dangerous smile, thinking, now I just need to execute them. Later, Celine gets ready and says, Dad, Celine is going to help people. RMC says, okay, take care. When Celine opens the door, she's shocked because all the top-level demons are outside helping every human, so Celine doesn't get a chance to help anyone. RMC thinks, everything is going according to my plan. But then Celine says, over there, and sees an old lady struggling with her stuff. Celine runs to help, and RMC thinks, no, I can't let my daughter do good deeds. He runs and helps the old lady. Celine sees a man digging a ditch and says, there's someone who needs help. RMC zooms over and helps him. Celine points to a cat, but RMC saves it. She even points to a guy who doesn't need help, but RMC still goes to help him. The whole day passes like this, and RMC doesn't let Celine do any work. His condition is like a sucked-out mango. Celine puts her hand on his shoulder, and when he looks at her, she says, today was really tiring, right? RMC says, wow, my daughter is giving me a massage. Celine laughs and says, at least I did something good. Hearing this, RMC is shocked because Celine helped him, completing her first target. Celine says, Papa, I'm going to study now, so don't disturb me. RMC says, all the best. He goes to another room where a demon is already waiting. RMC says, you know the plan, right? The demon, who stole a scroll from somewhere, laughs and opens it, turning into a fly. He goes to distract Celine, thinking, this is too easy. But as soon as he gets near her, Celine swats him dead in one hit, completing her second target of studying. RMC gets depressed, thinking, only stamina training is left. He gives a devilish smile, thinking, no need to worry about this. Celine had told him she'd climb a mountain for stamina training, so RMC sabotages the path with traps, bushes, rocks, and even a barrier. When Celine is about to leave, it's raining, and RMC is thrilled, thinking she can't do anything. But Celine trains at home and says, today's training is done, completing her third target. RMC's entire plan fails. Celine continues studying, helping others, and training daily to become a good hero. She grows up, wins trophies for her good deeds, and the day comes when she's getting ready to leave. She says, okay, I'll be back soon. We learn she's now 16 and has been accepted into the Hero Academy. RMC, crying, jumps to her and says, my daughter. Celine says, come on, Dad. I told you not to cry. I'm just going to school. RMC says, but it's a boarding school. Celine grabs his head and says, please stop crying. RMC says, okay, I'll shut up. Celine says, I'll come to meet you during vacation, okay? But RMC keeps crying. Someone says, Lady Celine. She turns, and it's Luke with a massive suit of armor, saying, Lady Celine, this armor was made for you. You should take it to stay safe. Celine says, do you really think I'll wear this? Both RMC and Luke act like kids in front of Celine. RMC, crying, says, can I come with you? Luke says, you should have taken this to stay safe. Celine says, you guys worry about me so much. She looks at the time and says, look, it's getting late. She says bye and leaves. Both of them cry heavily with RMC saying, take care, and Luke sobbing, Lady Celine grew up so fast. We see Celine super happy, thinking, this is just the start of my journey to becoming a hero. The scene cuts, and we see Luke trying to sell the armor to a bald guy who offers $300. Luke says, but it's brand new. Give me more. The bald guy says, $2.95. Luke says, why are you lowering the price? The scene cuts, and we see RMC at his castle, telling Luke, we recently got news that a hero is coming here and destroyed our cannon of death. Luke is explaining more, but RMC is lost in thought. Luke says, can we take a short break? RMC angrily says, Luke. Luke panics and apologizes, saying, forgive me, Your Highness. I didn't know my place. RMC says, what? Luke is confused, and RMC says, just in case, I'm asking. What if my daughter is being bullied at the academy? RMC is panicking, saying, I heard the academy has a lot of bullying. Luke thinks she's probably fine, but laughs and says, okay, let's move forward. He continues, but RMC isn't listening, looking at his daughter's photo and saying, my daughter is so cute. Luke says, he's not even listening to me. RMC says, it seems she has some good skills, so she's coming here. He suddenly realizes and says, wait, a strong hero? Luke says, those who can reach this place are definitely strong. Luke angrily says, I don't know how, but he managed to break our defenses and got here, so let me deal with him. RMC says, no need for that. You mentioned he's at the Plane of Silence, right? Okay, I need to go check. He gives a devilish smile. The scene cuts, and we see a horse cart heading toward a city. Celine is inside, sleeping. The cart hits a rock, jolting her awake. She's confused, and the driver says, don't you want to get off? Celine looks outside and says, oh, I need to get off. In her haste, she breaks the cart. The driver is shocked, and Celine realizes she caused trouble, thinking, looks like I created a mess today. The driver demands money, and Celine has to pay him. We learn she's arrived at Silo's kingdom, City of Heroes, also called Arca. Celine is thrilled, saying, so this is Arca. I finally reached the City of Heroes Academy. She thinks, this is just the start of Celine's adventure. Her stomach growls, and she says, looks like I need to eat something. She smells something and sees a bakery selling bread. She's delighted, saying, what's that? We see the old bakery owner, who says, next customer. He sees Celine, whose mouth is watering like a waterfall, and says, "Welcome. Looks like you're really hungry. What do you want to eat?" Celine says, "Wait a minute," and checks her purse, but she has no money left. She remembers, "Oh, I gave all my money to the driver. Looks like I'll have to come back next time." Her condition worsens from hunger and she cries, "It feels like I'll collapse from hunger." She sees a cat carrying bread and her mouth waters. She says, "What? Bread?" The cat goes to a spot and starts eating. We learn a boy is feeding stray cats, saying, "Looks like you guys are really hungry. I'll split this bread among you three." There are 3 cats, but Celine joins them, meowing and acting like a cat. The boy is confused. The scene shifts, and the boy's bags are empty. Celine is stuffing bread in her mouth, saying, "Is this food okay for me?" The boy says, "You already ate it." Celine finishes and says, "Oh, now I feel alive." She thanks the boy, saying, "You're a good kid." The boy blushes and says, "No big deal." Celine asks, "By the way, how old are you?" The boy says, "Why are you asking?" Celine says, "You look around my age." The boy, shyly, says, 16. Celine says, "I knew it. I'm 16 too, so we're the same age. Let's be friends." The boy, confused, says, "What? Friends just because we're the same age?" Celine says, "Of course, and you shared your bread with me." She notices a letter in his shirt pocket and says, "What's that in your inner pocket?" Before he can answer, a woman comes and says, "Silver." The boy panics and says, "Sorry, miss, I have to go." He quietly leaves with the woman. Celine is confused, and the woman says to Silver, "When did you start talking to low-status people? We have a lot to prepare, so hurry up." Silver says, "Okay, Mom." So, this witch-like woman is Silver's mother. Celine watches them go and remembers the letter, getting excited and saying, "That's the Academy's letter. Looks like we'll meet again soon." She gets up from the bench, stretches, and says, "Since my hunger is satisfied, I should go now." She puts her sword on her back, gets ready, and says, "Let's head to the Hero Academy." She runs off. Silver watches her, looking a bit sad. The scene cuts, and we see the Hero Academy, where many students have come for admission. An old man watches from a window, saying, "This time, a lot of students have come for admission." We're introduced to the main side characters one by one. From the main family of Silo's kingdom, Count Raffles' genius daughter, Ronita Raffles, is shown sitting on her guard's shoulder, saying, "I can't see anything." Her guard, Romaine, says, "That's because you're too short." Next, from the 4 machinery groups, an A-rank candidate from the village machinery group, third Chloe Diasiabeth, is introduced. Then, students from powerful species are shown. Leo from the wolf tribe, San from the dark elf clan, and Olaf, a dwarf. The 5th character is from the swordsman family of Latini Kingdom, an arrogant guy named Livik, the 2nd son of Dakines. You know, every story has a guy like this who gets beaten up all the time and has no respect. This is that guy, destined to get thrashed in the future. We see the old man, shocked, looking at Silver. We learn Silver is the son of Duke Jeans, the real power behind Latini Kingdom. The old man is confused, saying, "Duke Jean's son?" But compared to his family's reputation, he trails off as he sees someone approaching Silver. It's the arrogant Livik, who says, "Hey, aren't you my old friend?" Silver is shocked and says, "Livik?" Livik says, "So, the rumors were true that you're joining this academy." Silver says, "Yes." He's trembling with fear. Livik asks, "Why did you come to this academy? Were you always interested in becoming a hero?" Silver stammers, "No, Livik says, "What? Do you think becoming a hero will make you famous and the next head of your family?" Silver says nothing. One of Livik's goons, the one on the right, says, "Come on. Do you think a commoner like you can become a hero?" The other goon says, "You're the kind of guy even your own family ignores. You're just a concubine's son." Livik says, "Let me give you some advice, since you're an old friend. You're nothing but a puppet controlled by your greedy mother. Got it, idiot?" Silver's eyes fill with tears. Suddenly, Celine runs in, jumps, and lands on Livik's face, saying, "I'm safe." Livik is under her feet. Celine sees Silver and says, "Hey, we meet again." Silver's jaw drops and he says, maybe you should get off him first. Celine looks down, sees Livik like a dog under her feet, and says, oh, sorry. She gets off. The old man is shocked and checks Celine's file, seeing she was recommended by Baron Biwa with a guarantee. He thinks, a girl recommended by the second son of the Soman family, who flew in and took him down in one hit, a countryside girl. What kind of child is this? The scene cuts and we see our MC, who went to fight the hero. The hero sees our MC, gets ready to kill him, and jumps to attack. Our MC just stands there, and as the hero is about to strike, our MC punches him, sending him flying high and killing him instantly. Our MC says, was that really the guy? He's slapping the hero, trying to wake him, saying, come on, wake up, I have a job for you. But the guy is dead, so he's not waking up. The scene cuts, and we learn about the Enish Dull family, founders of Latni Kingdom, who gathered many knights. Being the second son of such a prestigious family, Livik has natural talent in swordsmanship. Livik, furious, shouts, who dared do this? He's shocked to see the girl who beat him up and thinks, I got knocked out by a girl in one attack. Silver asks Celine, what are you doing here? Celine says, I'm a new student. Surprised, huh? Silver thinks, I'm surprised by a lot of things about you. As they talk, someone says, hey. Celine turns and sees Livik, angry, saying, hey you. Celine says, oh, I'm Celine. Livik grabs her collar and says, no one asked your name. You must have a reason for landing on my face. Celine says, oh, you are the one who got in my way. I thought you were a fly, because I didn't feel much resistance. Livik is shocked, thinking, a fly. He angrily calls his goons. Node, Marco. Node says, looks like this girl wants to fight us. She's not scared of getting beaten, right, Marco? But Marco is standing like a ghost, staring at Celine, already in love with her at first sight. She looks like a fairy to him. Node beating him, and Livik says, I shouldn't have expected anything from these guys from the start. Silver tries to save Celine, saying, she's apologizing, so let her go. Livik says, since when did you get the courage to talk to me like that? Silver starts trembling. A girl steps between them, saying, that's enough. Both Livik and Silver's eyes go to her precious assets as she grabs them by the shoulders, pressing them against her. She says, you're future heroes, so you shouldn't fight like this. They both back off, blushing. Livik says, who are you and why are you in my way? The girl says, I'm the symbol of iron and goddess of peace, Chloe D. Elizabeth, but you can call me Chloe. Hearing her name, Livik thinks, Chloe D. Elizabeth? The Holy Saints candidate? How did she end up in this academy? Chloe says, our welcome ceremony is about to start, so we need to hurry. Livik says, yo, Silver, we'll talk properly next time. And you're next. He's talking to Celine too. He leaves with his goons, bad-mouthing them. Chloe, irritated, says, look at those arrogant kids. The scene cuts and a coughing man says, you did well coming here from every continent. I'm your instructor, Muzad, and I'll conduct your level test. Celine, confused, says, level what? A righteous guy approaches and says, seems you're curious about the level test. Celine says, who are you? He says, my name is Wingen, and I'll start explaining. The level test, as the name suggests, is a test where your skills are evaluated and you're ranked bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, 5 levels in total. The higher your rank, the larger your division pool, which you can choose from. Your extra evolution criteria depend on your instructor, but mainly your fight judgment and cooperation skills matter most for evolving. If you fail this test, you'll be kicked out. Wegan explains this, but as expected, it all goes over Celine's head. She doesn't understand a thing. Her brain is lower than her knees. Wegan says, what did you say? You want to know about divisions too? Celine says, I didn't ask that. Since you're saying it, I'll tell you. Celine says, I told you I didn't ask. As they argue, Muzad says, you all came here with a trustworthy person's recommendation, but I won't believe it until I see it with my own eyes. If you want to officially enter the academy, you'll have to personally prove your hero qualifications. Muzad jumps from above, lands, and creates a huge crack in the ground. He says, leave everything except your equipment and follow me. Those who can't prove themselves go back home. Later, Muzad takes them to a place with open portals and says, "Your first test is to clear a dungeon. These 5 portals will lead you there. Mine, jungle, plains, fortress, and underground labyrinth, known as virtual dangers. This test will be in teams because forming and managing a good team is essential for a good hero." He gives them 10 minutes to form teams and decide which dungeon to enter. Celine, Silver, and Chloe hear this, and Celine says, "We're only 3 people right now. We need 1 more. Chloe says, "Yeah, looks like we need another." Silver says, "So we're already a team?" Chloe grabs Silver's face and says, "What, you don't like us?" Silver, nervous seeing Chloe so close, says, No, it's not that. I mean, we haven't introduced ourselves and don't know each other." Chloe is totally seducing him. Celine and Chloe introduce themselves and Silver says, "My name is Silver." Celine and Chloe think about who their last member will be. Silver thinks, "Should we at least tell each other about our skills? How will we choose a dungeon without knowing each other's abilities? It'd be easier to form a strong team. Alright, I'll decide by looking at their equipment." Miss Celine has a huge sword, and her strength makes her perfect for a vanguard. Miss Chloe is a saint, so she'll fulfill the supporter role well. To balance the team, he's doing math in his head about who to pick when someone shouts, "Our 4-person team is formed." Chloe brings a dark elf, and Celine asks, "What's her name?" Chloe says, "She said her name is San." Silver is shocked. Their team of 4 is formed, with San standing there, asleep, probably high on some weird weed. Silver thinks, "Is this something we should decide so quickly?" Celine chooses a dungeon using Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, and picks one. Silver's eyes tear up, thinking, "What kind of idiots have I ended up with?" Muzad watches and says, "A forest dungeon. If someone has good vision, it can be cleared easily, but there's no straightforward path." The scene cuts to the forest dungeon, where they must defeat the Lord of the Forest. Muzad watches, saying, "Let's see how they proceed, and if they succeed." Celine is super excited, saying, "It's finally starting." Silver, in shock, asks, "Do you have a plan?" Celine says, "A plan?" She explains, "We'll go into the fortress, find the dungeon boss, kill it, and clear it." Silver is stunned, thinking, "This doesn't sound like a plan at all." His gaze falls on a sewer, and he says, "A sewer. We can follow it to easily enter the dungeon and kill the boss." He shouts, "I have a plan." But when he looks, Celine is gone. He asks Chloe, "Where's Miss Celine?" Chloe points, saying, "That way." Silver looks and sees Celine, sword in hand, charging toward the dungeon gate. The monsters see her and say, "A human? What does she want?" Celine, shouting, dives down. Silver thinks, there's no way she can break that big gate. But Celine smashes the entire gate in one hit. Silver's jaw drops and Chloe laughs, saying, "Wow, Celine is really strong." Celine, laughing, says, "I cleared the way, come on." Silver shouts, "Look behind you." Celine turns and sees a ton of monsters, saying, "That's a lot." Silver thinks, I know Miss Celine is very powerful, but there are too many enemies. Chloe steps in and says, "Looks like it's my turn." Silver, relieved, says, "Yes, Miss Chloe, use a supporting spell." But Chloe grabs her knuckles and gets ready to fight. Silver says, "Miss Chloe, I said use a spell. What are you doing?" She says, "I'm going. I can't just stand here watching." Silver's faith in the world shatters as a saint goes to fight with her fists. The monsters say, "How dare they destroy this place?" They surround Celine. One monster laughs, saying, "She's just one human, and there are so many of us. What can she do?" Celine says, "Secret sword technique. She uses great sword swing." The monsters say, "That's no secret technique." But Celine is thrashing them all with her sword. Silver shouts, "Miss Celine, behind you." A goblin, laughing, says, "I caught a human." Celine closes her eyes, thinking it's about to attack, but Chloe comes from behind, attacks, and kills it. Celine is confused, and Chloe winks, saying, "I'm helping you." Celine gets even more pumped and starts thrashing everyone. Both girls are fighting alone, while Silver and San just stand there watching. San is asleep standing up, unbothered, and Silver is watching like a ghost. Saline hears a sound and turns to see a huge monster saying, "Who dare destroy my forest?" Saline says, "Is this the boss?" If that's the case, she gets ready and says, "Secret technique." The boss says, "What's secret technique?" Saline jumps and says, "Jump and slam down Enjoy's sword." The boss is defeated and says, "What a powerful secret technique." His minions say, "My lord, that wasn't a secret technique." Saline says, "Looks like that wasn't the boss." Her instructor and Silver are shocked, their jaws dropped. Saline single-handedly clears the dungeon. They come out and the instructor thinks, "This is the first time I've seen such a strategy. What kind of child is this?" The scene cuts, and we see Livik's team facing their dungeon boss, who roars loudly. Livik's goon covers his ears, saying, "He's shouting too much. Is this really the boss?" Livik jumps, uses a skill, and kills the boss in one hit. They clear the dungeon too. As they exit the portal, everyone talks about how Livik killed it in one strike, calling him Akira Livik. Livik is thrilled, thinking, "Looks like I'm the first to clear the dungeon." But when he checks the scoreboard, Saline's team is in first place, clearing it in 5 minutes 26 seconds, while Livik's team took 5 minutes 40 seconds. Livik thinks, "What? I came in second." He hears someone shouting, "We came in first." He turns and sees Saline holding Silver's hands, dancing in joy. Silver says, "Let go of my hands." Chloe says, "How cute." Livik's goon says, "Second place in the first test is a good start." The other goon says, "Yes, all thanks to Mr. Livik." But Livik grabs the first goon's throat, saying, "A good start? We lost to Silver, and you call this a good start?" The goon chokes, saying, "That's not what I meant." Livik says, "Watch your tongue and remember who brought you here." He lets go, and the goon apologizes. Livik, furious, thinks, "How dare you insult me? I'll show you what happens when you mess with me." He walks toward them, and Saline turns. At the same time, Pinky arrives, and both Livik and Pinky say, "You." All three are confused about what's happening. Livik and Pinky say together, "What do you want?" Pinky says, "I have something important to talk to her about, so don't disturb us, you yellow fly." Livik says, "It doesn't matter how important your talk is, you should leave, kid." Calling her kid hurts Pinky deeply, and she says, "Kid?" Livik says, "Yes." Pinky says, "What? Kid?" She gets furious, unleashing her power, saying, "Do I really look like a kid to you?" She charges to attack Livik, but Saline steps in and stops both, saying, "Guys, don't fight like this." Both think, "She stopped my attack." As they're thinking, Pinky is lifted by her shirt by Romaine, her guard, who says, "Looks like Pinky caused trouble here. I apologize." Pinky angrily shouts, "Romaine, what are you doing?" and starts hitting him, saying, "Put me down." Romaine says, "I'm not doing that." Pinky points at Saline and says, "This is a warning. Next time, I'll come in first place." As she says this, Romaine shoves a lollipop in her mouth and says, "Let's go." Pinky says, "Next time, you won't do this, Romaine. This lollipop tastes like salmon rose." Romaine says, "Yes, yes," and takes her away. Livik breathes a sigh of relief and tells Saline, "Enjoy for now, but the next task's result will be different." Saline doesn't understand, as usual, everything going over her head. Livik looks at Silver and says, "Make sure you form a good team." Silver can't even open his mouth to reply. Livik leaves. Silver turns and sees Chloe and Saline in their own high, having fun. The scene cuts to later, where the instructor says, "Well done, you completed your first task." He shows the leaderboard and says, "Teams that failed will have their acceptance canceled immediately." Fortunately, no team failed this time. Everyone is happy, and the instructor says, "However, the next task's result will be different." Saline, Livik, and Pinky get super excited. The instructor says, the second test is flag capture. The scene cuts, and we see the hero at RMC's castle, still alive. His eyes open, and he says, "Where am I?" Someone says, "Oh, "You're finally awake." The hero panics and sees RMC sitting in front of him. He says, He remembers their fight, where RMC took him down with one punch. The hero says, "You're a high-level demon, right?" RMC says, "No, higher." The hero says, "A top-level demon?" RMC says, "No, higher." The hero says, "A heavenly demon?" RMC says, "Still higher." The hero says, "I get it. You're the guy who follows the Demon King's every order. That cruel, hot-headed Demon King's assistant whose efforts are never acknowledged. I know you're Luke." RMC gets super irritated, and Luke, in the background, is laughing because the hero thinks RMC is him. RMC says, "Does this guy really not know? Or is he pretending?" The hero, whose head must have been bashed by RMC, says, "Okay, why did the almighty Demon King capture me?" RMC says, "I'll offer you a deal." The hero says, "A deal with the devil? What is it? And what if I refuse?" RMC doesn't react, and a high-quality VFX fighting scene is shown. The hero's condition is terrible because RMC beat him badly. The hero says, Okay, I accept your deal. What is it?" In the end, RMC shows him a picture of his daughter and says, "Look, this is my daughter. She's beautiful, right?" The hero says, "Yes, she's very beautiful." RMC says, "Do you want to die?" The hero says, No, I just looked. She's not that beautiful." And RMC says, "What? Do you want to die?" And we see that our hero is thinking, what exactly is he trying to make me say? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the recap, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more epic stories. See you in the next one.